For player profiles, in-depth features, and exclusive interviews, visit sfhandbook.com to learn more about the best young football players in the world. Hello, welcome to the Scouted Football Podcast with me, Joe Donoghue. It is 4 years and 2 weeks since England lifted the Under-17 World Cup in India, with a team that included Phil Foden, Jadon Sancho, Callum Hudson-Odoi, Conor Gallagher, Mark Guéhi and Emil Smith-Rowe. 2017 was a bumper year for England's youth teams, Under-17 and Under-20 World Cup winners, victors at the Toulon tournament as well as the Under-19 European Championships. The Under-17 World Cup as a whole was a tournament we loved covering at Scouted, and 4 years on is one which we continue to refer back to, not just because of England's exploits, but also the players who've risen to prominence from other countries ever since. For that reason, it's Stephen Ganavis back on the pod. Lots of rogue names we haven't discussed in years, probably. They'll be brought back up in the next half an hour or so, I'm sure. So very much looking forward to this one. Steve, how's it going on the other side of the world? Ready for the recap?
Yeah. This is probably one of the favorite tournaments ever. This one, it was just full of unreal players that have gone on to do some extraordinary things. But then there's some other interesting stories of players that seemed like they were going to be world beaters then, but have kind of dropped off. It's the fun thing about the tournaments at under-17 level is you can kind of get in early and then kind of track the different career paths and really get a broader sense of the trends and what kind of moves affect different players in different ways.
Yeah, I think it's about those moves, isn't it? You know, who gets that first move can be so important, particularly for players coming from developing nations, whether they go into somewhere which is development focused or whether they've maybe bit at the lucrative offer. I think is an interesting subplot to these tournaments or following these tournaments. I suppose it's probably best to start at the end, given that it was England 5, Spain 2 in that final at the Under-17 World Cup. It was a rerun of the Under-17 Euros final, which Spain won a few months earlier. They won that on penalties. So a little bit of revenge for England on that day. I actually remember where I was watching it, which I think in the UK it was broadcast live on one of the terrestrial channels, so not just on Eurosport as the rest of the tournament was. But I mean, since then, we kind of knew at that point that a select number of these England under-17s would go on to seriously good things. But that's obviously not been the case for all of them. I listed off those 5 or 6 names at the beginning in the introduction. Your Fodens and your Sanchos and your Hudson-Odois, they were pretty clear. They were pretty standout there, and they were already on that path, on that trajectory. But there was a lot of grey area for some other players in that squad where, they still had to prove themselves at a club level. And it's interesting to see now who was sort of an unused sub for most of the tournament, who's now a Premier League player, who was, an integral first teamer for the 17s under Steve Cooper, who's now, struggling to get first team minutes elsewhere.
Yeah, you're right. There were a few players before this tournament that were already not established, but already on that path to superstardom. For example, Sancho had already left Manchester City to join Dortmund, and already their exploits of the under-17 Euros a few months beforehand were actually lost to Spain in the final. The likes of Sancho, Hudson-Odoi, Brewster were already dominating. But I think that's one of the just the depth of this team. You see the subs, and you've got Conor Gallagher that couldn't get on the field. Angel Gomez of United fame now at Lille, who was super highly rated coming through at United and could hardly get on the field. The team was stacked. Even guys like Danny Loader, who's now at Porto. Goalkeepers is Joe Bursick, who is at Stoke now, playing regularly. That was the reserve keeper. Stephen Sessegnon at Fulham. Panzo, that was at Chelsea, and now Dijon. The captain, Latibaudier, who was a Man City Youth Academy product at the time. It's now gone on to do quite well at Swansea. Mark Guéhi of Chelsea fame, now at Palace. Is the amount of depth at that. Normally at under 17 level, you have a few that go on to do some things, but you'll have a lot of players that some of them never really come established pros. But this team, almost from top to bottom, have gone on to at least be senior players. Pretty much nearly all of them have gone on to become senior players at like Championship or Premier League level, which is pretty astonishing, and I think speaks to the strides that the English academy system almost universally has taken in the last probably 10 to 15 years.
Yeah, and it's a similar story on the Spain side of things as well. Perhaps not as many players sort of making it at sort of La Liga two or La Liga level, but the ones who were the standouts in that team, they've really established themselves well. So I'm talking about Victor Chust, who's on loan at Cadiz at the moment. Hugo Guillamon, who's obviously playing regularly for Valencia, getting yellow cards like they're going out of fashion. Matteo Murray, who then got a move to Borussia Dortmund. Juan Miranda at Real Betis. That back four was quite established at that time, especially. And then you've obviously got the likes of Ferran Torres, who was obviously at Valencia at that time and was quite impressive for Spain's under-17s, but has now gone to the levels that Phil Foden is at with Manchester City. Eric Garcia, interestingly enough, was an unused substitute in that final, which is no doubt a topic you want to get into, Steve.
Yeah, well, it's pretty much every single one of these players at the time that you've listed were either at Valencia, Barcelona, or Real Madrid. And the pathway since, you've got
Yeah.
Sergio Gomez, who left Barcelona to join Dortmund for a few mil, then didn't really do well at Dortmund, had some loans back to Spain, and found himself, instead of playing left wing, playing left back at Anderlecht. You've got Miranda, who him and Murray were very highly rated. Murray followed Sergio Gomez to Dortmund as well. Miranda's found himself at Real Betis. Then you have who else? Abel Ruiz, who ended up at Braga, but it's probably one of them that you kind of never really saw that progression coming into senior level, and I don't think he's doing setting the world on fire at Braga either. But again, the amount of quality from that one squad, you'd normally under 17 level, if you've got probably 5 or 6 that become pretty good senior pros, you'd be happy. And there's probably about 8 to 10 in their squad. You got Cesar Jalabert, who's now gone to Mirandes in the second division in Spain, who seems to be doing quite decently there. Yeah, incredible squad. But it's interesting the different kind of career pathways there in comparison to the Premier League ones. I think a lot of these ones, especially the ones at Barcelona in the past, would have probably sifted into the first team, but a lot of them found their pathways blocked, but they're quickly more than happy to move on if there's no pathway or go on loan. Whereas I think the Premier Leagues often tend to stay, because of the PL2 going up until under 23s, tend to hang around and maybe get stuck a little bit in under 23 teams if they're not breaking through into the first team, which can, I think, stunt the growth of some English players a little bit. And I'm sure you have more to say on that, considering you do quite a lot of coverage of under 23s with Leeds.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's quite true. I mean, as soon as you're getting to that stage where you've got 18 months or 12 months left on your deal and you're still playing 23s football and you're maybe 19, 20 years old, you do begin to think like, well, am I going to sign a contract extension with no promise of pathway
Yeah,
and
you making up
still
the
be
numbers.
exactly, and I'm still going to be 23 playing 23s football. That's not what you want to be doing, because you're playing against players who are 5 years your junior, or taking the risk and going on loan. Because it's unfortunate, but I understand it from a pragmatic sense. But some clubs view their 23s purely just to exist. It's filler. If the first team squad need extra bodies, then they can fill in. But there are other clubs where there is an actual pathway which has been developed and is used as a selling point. I do think that I mean, we look at the likes of, in that England team, it's George McEachran and Nia Kirby, who were World Cup winners at under 17 level. They're both still
And McEachran quite played quite a lot at that
He
tournament
did,
as well.
yeah,
He wasn't
yeah.
just one that was sitting on the bench. He was all up in there.
And he, I mean, Chelsea's the perfect example of it. It's, do you stick around in the hope that one day you'll be given the opportunity, or do you go out and do you chance your arm elsewhere? I mean, you look at that. I mean, we can polarize it. McEachran played more football than Conor Gallagher at that tournament, and yet look at the progression of Conor Gallagher this season. And that's as a result of him going out on some well managed loans. They were well picked out for him, but he's gone up in terms of the stature of the clubs he's played for incrementally. Charlton, Swansea, West Brom, now Palace. He's gone from lower mid table championship to top half championship to lower half Premier League to sort of mid table Premier League, and it's that gradual progression, and he's been integral at every one of those teams he's played at. So the crucial thing here is that he's played, whereas George McEachran has been, is I don't want to say stunted, because you can always, these players are obviously very talented, and just if they get the right move, if they depart at the right time, then they could probably resurrect their careers. But it does make it for an interesting debate when you polarize what's transpired over the past 4 years and 2 weeks.
Yeah, especially when you compare it to other countries that most other leagues, I'm pretty sure they're under 19s kind of, you know, there's no youth football after under 19 level just about. Whereas, yeah, the PL2 kind of stands out as an outlier. But the thing is that it seems as though the PL2, basically, if you're good enough at the under 18 Premier League, you're essentially playing PL2. So it's
Mm.
basically just a kind of older filler players plus the best under 18s all in one comp together. So if you're not one of the best under 18s and you're one of the filler 23s, you're kind of just in a bit of a purgatory state at that point. So I guess if it's 6 years on, how long are we on from this World Cup now? 4 years.
4.
And McEachran now would probably be 21, so it's not like all is lost. There's plenty of
Exactly,
time
yeah.
to progress your career and take steps forward, even at 21. But yeah, every year at this stage is making things difficult to start breaking through into a Premier League level team, for example, where a lot of his peers from this team are now.
Yeah, I think it would be good to get onto sort of some of the other players this tournament, or who were at this tournament, from the other countries. And I've compiled a little things you might have missed list, from the Under-17 World Cup in 2017, because it was, it's funny now looking back and seeing these names who maybe got sent off, or scored a goal, or were left on the bench in this tournament, and 4 years down the line are playing for a super club. But Serginho Dest came off the bench and was sent off against England in that quarterfinal, for the USA, which I completely missed. Ajax's Mohamed Kudus scored a penalty in Ghana's quarterfinal defeat, which was a penalty won by Nordsjælland's Ibrahim Sadiq. And obviously the relationship between Right to Dream and FC Nordsjælland, which we've profiled in one of the previous handbooks. That's quite interesting to see, given how I think there were 3 or 4 Right to Dream players in that under-17 World Cup squad for Ghana. One which is quite close to home for me, Ilham Meslier, who obviously is number 1 for Leeds. He was France's third choice keeper at this tournament, which, I mean, now seems a bit silly given the progression he's had. Are there any that stand out for you that maybe that other people might have missed, but we kind of remember fondly, Steve?
Yeah, well, that France squad was pretty stacked. You had like Maxence Lacroix playing, Maxence Caqueret, Yassine Adli was in there, and he did really really well. I mean, Guéhi is kind of when there was
Hmm.
each nation had the really good attacker. Like Italy had Moise Kean and Moise Kean. Sorry, he's clarified that. um, and then Germany had Fieta Arp, who's kind of gone on and not really done anything. Abel Ruiz was. Did I say Abel Ruiz? Ryan Brewster was at for England. So all the kind of big European teams had their big name striker. And then Chouameni for France as well. And then I think the really interesting one with the French team was probably 2 of their highest rated players going to the tournament were Claudio Gomez, who was at PSG, and Willem Goebbels, who was at Lyon. And after the tournament, they both ended up leaving, and Gomez left on a free transfer to join Man City, and Goebbels left for 20 million when Monaco were flush with the Mbappe, Bernardo Silva, Fabinho, Bakayoko cash. Um, and they were probably, along with Guéhi, the three big names, and those two really have gone on and done very, very little. So kind of, again, it's all about that pathway. And I think if you make that big move a little bit too early, in that case with Goebbels had a fair few injuries, to be fair to him. I think he did his ACL. But Claudio Gomez got stuck, I think, in that
Getting stuck. Yeah.
under 23s kind of pipeline in England. Whereas he would have been ready to kind of start breaking into the first team because he was dominating it in the UEFA Youth League at the time as well. But yeah, you get stuck now. Is at loan at Barnsley in the Championship, getting, I think, not a lot of minutes. But again, he's still 21, I believe, so there's still a lot of time to turn things around and start to get more consistent minutes. But when you compare it to the likes of Tchouaméni, who took a little bit longer to break out, but when he did get his chance, he was ready at senior level to come in and do a job. Guéhi, the same, left a little bit later from Lyon to join Nice, and he's playing a key role and starring in Ligue 1. Adley, the same, stayed at PSG a bit longer, got his move to Bordeaux, and now he's off to Milan next season. So yeah, it's kind of swings and roundabouts, but this is what I was saying before. You start to see the trends, and probably will inform how you analyze other moves of younger players in the future, especially at that 17, 18 kind of age, which is such a key moment in a career between leaving junior football and going into the senior team. What you can expect.
Yeah, I don't necessarily think that Claudio Gomez leaving PSG at that point was a bad move. I just think that potentially Manchester City, as alluring as it was, maybe wasn't the best for him because, as you were saying, he was dominating midfields and rightly so. He was a very finely honed technical product of PSG's academy, and you did get the impression that he could have gone somewhere and played regular football, even if it was not in a top five league. At 18, 19, that doesn't matter. He'd still have been getting serious minutes, even if he'd gone to Ligue 2 or to Belgium or to the Netherlands. But as you say, he got stuck.
And in his case, I think if you're an attacking player, you can get away with it a bit more because it's easier to, if you're scoring like a million goals a game, it's easier to show that you're ready to come into the first team. But in his case, he's a holding midfielder, and it's a lot. And so for holding midfielders and say centre backs, for example, or goalkeepers, it's harder as a young player to come straight in and be trusted at senior level. So I think that that's a kind of, whereas compared to someone like Sancho who left City to go join Dortmund, firstly you're joining a team that's has pathways, and secondly you're an attacking player that's absolutely tearing it up at youth level. So you're always going to get your chance. And then I think the other thing is that you join, that if you have a little bit of power and you kind of understand as a player what role a team has for you when you join, whereas Sancho would have had guarantees of his of minutes, whereas someone like Claudio Gomez, if his promise when he's joining is, we're going to put you into the under 23s, and when you're ready, we'll progress you into the senior team. But if there's a breakdown somewhere, you're not performing at such a high level at junior level, you're not breaking in. There's going to be some sort of issue for you.
Yeah, it's crazy to think, isn't it, that Willem Goebbels moved for 3 times the fee that Sancho moved from City to Dortmund.
I am pretty sure he did his ACL, so that
Yeah, oh
probably
yeah,
needs to
yeah.
be
That's a big
factored in.
caveat.
They bought him and they bought Pietro Pellegrini, I think,
Yeah,
both for about 20 mil, and both of them, I think both of them did ACLs.
it's
So
really
that's
just
probably a little bit unlucky as well.
yeah, very unfortunate. I think with Pietro Pellegrini, he looked like a 30-year-old man when he was 16, though, didn't he? So I can see how
Yeah.
maybe you could have been persuaded. Um, but other things you might have missed. Andres Perea represented Colombia's under-17s at this tournament. He's now a full US men's national team international.
And Jamison Campas
Yes, Jamaican
was in that
Campas
team
was
as
there.
well.
Yeah, yeah.
And we've
Now
talked
of
about him
Gremio.
quite a lot.
Gremio, where there was a bit of fan trouble recently. Fair to say.
I think he scored on the weekend as well.
Oh, really?
I think he's got
See
his
that
first
there you
goal
go.
for them.
You're keeping your eye on South American stuff. I know I just had Tim Vickery on the podcast, but hey, you'll be the next one doing CONMEBOL updates for me. Steve, you first set eyes on Libby Kakash of New Zealand as well, and he's one of the few players who's sort of made it good in Europe since then, isn't he?
I think there's Eli
Just
Just
yeah.
at or how yeah. He's doing quite well at in Denmark, I think, in the second division. But yes, Libby uh, after that took a little while, but broke out into the Wellington Phoenix senior squad, and pretty much from the get go looked like ready made senior body that can match it physically at A League level, and he's taken that. He went with Big Kev Muscat to St Troyden, and Kevin Muscat lasted about 6 weeks, but it seems as though Libby Kikachi is been very 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 solid for them. So there was even at one point a rumor of Juventus trying to sign him for their under-23 side that plays in the third division in Italy against senior teams, but yeah, he's been really consistent for them as far as I know, and it's probably one that I kind of miss watching from the A League because he was always a good watch.
We should probably get on to sort of the importance of youth international tournaments now because obviously it's us discussing a tournament which we watched. Not everybody had access to be able to see these games, or not everybody will have been aware that it was going on at the time. But I think just purely from a getting in there first perspective, it's always good to see these players to chart their and plot their pathways as a result. Following these tournaments, that's one of the main reasons why I've engaged with them in recent years, especially the under-17 ones, because you could have your Phil Fodens and your Jadon Sanchos going up against these players from Mali like Hadji Drame and Salam Jiddu. These players were, I mean, Hadji Drame in particular, he's in Estonia now. I think he's at Paide Linnemaskond in the top flight in Estonia, and he was a player at this tournament. He was somebody who really stuck out. And it's interesting to think, that there's an importance at these youth international tournaments of getting the right move, what comes afterwards, whether you are, whether, I mean, as well as the scouting element, it's from a pathway perspective as well. Is that, I mean, Steve, what was the main motivation for you sort of watching under-17 tournaments and the under-20 World Cup and under-19 Euros and that sort of thing?
Yeah, well, I think it just gives you a kind of like a holistic view of um, the start of the pathway. Like, for example, European players are very lucky that basically the
Yeah.
pathway starts and ends in their country. So they do well at under 17 World Cup, but they don't need to be hunting for a move to Europe to go to an academy and progress that way. I think it's always difficult for African players because you get, firstly, when they perform really well at these tournaments, they're not old enough yet to actually be allowed to move to Europe. So you've got that possibly loss of momentum coming out of these tournaments and then progressing your career. And then it's, just difficult relocating your whole career from say from Africa or from Brazil over to Europe. So you're always going to lose some talent that just doesn't adapt well to new surroundings. Um, so yeah, in that Mali team, there was quite a few. There was Hadji Drame, Salam Judu, who went to Monaco, and he's still playing in their reserves, but really haven't heard anything about what he's been doing. And then there's Jamusa Traore, who ended up in Turkey in their second division, but has been, I'm pretty sure, released since I think about 6 months ago. But then you got others like Mohamed Kamara, who's now at Salzburg. But the difference is that Salzburg have a really well-established
Mm.
pathway. Another one that got has been stuck in Monaco is Eric Aia, who um, played for Ghana and was scoring heaps of goals playing up front for them. I think he won the Golden Boot at the under-17 AFCON before this World Cup as well, if I remember correctly. He's got Georges Mendes as his agent, but he's been stuck in Monaco as well. So it's all about landing spots, and I do think that building of the momentum is a really important one. Like you see someone like Sancho or Hudson-Odoi really kind of use the momentum from playing in these tournaments to push on and start to get those senior minutes. Whereas, yeah, as I said, with that disconnect between you have to turn 18 before you can go to Europe, and um, if you don't have that momentum then pushing you and teams haven't seen you play, like for example, like there'll be probably players in here that by the time they turn 18, no scouts have like really watched them play much football since they played at that under-17 World Cup. So um, it's such an inexact science, but that's what makes it so interesting, I guess.
Yeah, I think you mentioned in George Mendes that that's a different topic altogether. The level of representation that some of these players will have. That you'll come into this tournament and then, rightly so, you might impress and impress, especially from developing nations, as you say. You know, if you're not getting adequate representation or representation which is looking out for your best interest, then yeah, you know what, you could be used as a pawn in a very, in a much bigger game, and somebody's sort of, I don't know, piggybacking on your own individual success from this tournament if you're a player. So I think that's a separate argument. And for somebody like George Mendes, Eric Ayer, is he going to be a top priority now for George Mendes and the Gestifut agency? Probably not.
But he does have the power to move someone like a year around to find him a good destination.
Oh,
That's
exactly. Well, there's
probably
two sides to the same coin. Yeah.
that is the beauty of someone like George Mendes. If you're a young player, is he has the power to move you around as he sees fit, just about to put you in a better situation. Same with Rayola, I guess.
Well, exactly. But then, at the same time, if he's putting you at clubs, I mean, we've seen in recent history, if you're a George Mendes client, and I think there was a player who's moving to Valencia this summer, and Jose Bordalas basically said, "No, I do not want him," and it kind of was a power play between Mendes and Bordalas, and eventually Mendes won, and he's not really playing very much for Valencia, and you do think, well, I mean, are you really looking out for my best interest here? Are you really trying to find?
Depends what the wage packet is that the player's getting at Valencia.
Well, exactly. Yeah. I mean, it was a loan, so it's
Ah.
yeah. I doubt it was that different, but it does make you think, doesn't it?
Yeah, well, agents definitely have a important role to play. I think there's obviously picking your agent super important, and picking the destination club in the end is
Mm.
super important. As I said, someone like Mohamed Kamara joining Salzburg, the development pathway that they have for players coming from Africa, from all over Africa in Salzburg is so successful. It's incredible how many fantastic, Dakar. We've seen
And Wepu, of course.
Mwepu, who's got the drug ban at the moment.
Sekou Koita.
That's it. There's a million others that I can't think of right now. Now they got Dorgel as well in there. Is it Guindo? I
Window,
think.
yeah, he's coming
Yeah.
through. He signed with two other guys at the same time, didn't he?
So that's a pretty established route to take now if you're an African player, and you see that as a potential move for you. You'd almost be silly not to take it, but it's so hard. But because as I said, European players just stay in place, or if
Mm.
something does come up, you take advantage of it. But someone from Brazil or from Africa or from Australia or New Zealand or whatever has to get that right move that's perfect and works straight away. So it adds another barrier of difficulty. Although a lot of the Brazil players from this generation have gone on to do some pretty good things. So yeah, it's just trial and error.
Yeah, and just to finish off, I think that the final reason why we watch these youth international tournaments is the scouting element, because you see some players that you'd never ever heard of before, and then you follow their pathways. I think it the Zambia under 20 team in 2017. I know we're kind of veering off a little bit, but you had your
Banda.
Dakas, Emmanuel Banda, Fashion Sakala, who obviously scored a hat trick for Glasgow Rangers at the weekend. Edward Chilufya, who's doing well in Sweden at the moment. It's good. It's nice to see these, and I think one that I always remember is from the under 20 World Cup in 2019, which was the hat trick of hat tricks from Erling Braut Haaland. Um, you know, coming into that tournament, you kind of knew he was one of the names, but the 6 months that he had after that, incredible, wasn't it? So the scouting element, getting in early, identifying these players, and then following and tracking them afterwards is great.
The best part is like when you really pick out one that you really, really enjoyed watching, and then because one of my favorites when we watched this tournament that I was all over was Marcos Antonio, who's
I was
now
wondering
at Shakhtar.
how long it would be until we got to him.
So yes, at the time he was I think it was Atletico Paranaense in Brazil, and kind of took him a little while. Then he moved to Estoril in the second division in Portugal, and I thought it's a bit of a strange one, but okay, we'll see how we go. And then 6 months later, Shakhtar came in and signed him, and it's since then just tracking his progress at Shakhtar under a few different managers now under De Zerbi. So when you have a player like that and you kind of see them at the start, and then you get to follow that career progress, and then they turn out to be hopefully anywhere near as good as you expected that they might become. It's very, it's just rewarding, I guess. It's just,
gratifying, isn't it?
Yeah, gratifying. Then it's not even a thing to gloat, but it's just because it's not hard to watch a tournament of the best under 17 players in the world and be able to say, oh, I saw this person play this age and I thought they were good. Because you're going to watch this tournament and see 30, 40 players end up being really, really good senior players. But if there's one particular that you know, especially one of the lesser known ones that sticks out to you and you get to follow them and see them progress, it's a very satisfying experience.
Right, that's all from us. It's a shorter episode than usual today, but it is a recap, of course. Thank you to Steve for joining me. And just before we do go, I think it's probably prudent to bring up when the next Under-17 World Cup is. That's 2023 in Peru, so that should be very entertaining, very good. Some players who will be there who we haven't even heard of already. So
Except Warren Zaire-Emery at PSG, who's been killing
right,
in
okay.
the UEFA Youth League. You might be there.
There you
He's
go,
only
Steve.
15, I think, at the moment. So
Unless he's
we're already
progressed so
tracking them.
far.
We're already tracking them.
That's the scouted promise. That's the scouted guarantee. And then the Under-20 World Cup, the next one is in Indonesia in 2023 as well. There are some games taking place in Bali there. So, Steve,
So you can come down and see me there.
you're going to get across for them, aren't you?
Yeah, definitely. Come down. We'll get the Bali Ultras going.
Excellent stuff. Well, this has been the Scouted Football Podcast and a sort of Where Are They Now recap episode on the FIFA Under-17 World Cup from 2017, which England won after a 5-2 win over Spain. But that's all from us on the Scouted Pod. See you next week. Bye for now. For player profiles, in-depth features, and exclusive interviews, visit sfhandbook.com to learn more about the best young football players in the world.